Right, we're getting straight into it today. Destiny 2 has problems, and I could go solely into the negative of everything that's been happening in the last few weeks, but I just want to use today's video to provide some passionate feedback from a fan who just wants to see the game succeed in the long run. And also, I realize this might be the first time you guys are seeing me with my new hairdo. This is all because of the Twitch, so hello. Anyway, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that this game needs to be less broken. It feels like every time that we get a new release, like a new season, a new major expansion, the game just breaks even more. I mean, we've heard all the jokes about the spaghetti code over the years, about how one thing just affects something in the complete opposite corner of the game, and I actually have quite a few examples that I want to go through here, and these include things like the grenade and melee stat not boosting regen as much as they did, or were stated before the Edge of Fate. A lot of other things to do with the stats as well, like the class stats only counting stats every 10 points rather than every 1, like it should have, like is what they said before the DLC came out. You've got other things like melee and grenade, which were boosting the potency of certain super attacks, which I thought was quite cool, but obviously that was a bug because it has been fixed now. And there was also the fact that mobility, which is now a hidden stat, has been set to 0, which has been fixed now, but it was set at 0 for, I don't know, like a month and a half or so, when it should have been 30 for, I believe, Warlocks and Titans, and 40 for Hunters, which being 0 for everything, people noticed it pretty quickly, I think. You know, you have more recent ones like Sturm and lightweight swords. You've got all of the issues that plagued the day one raid, like the launch bug, the sprint bug, no rally, all the disconnects and so on. You know, we've got recent ones like ornaments crashing Xbox consoles. Like, how is that happening? How is an ornament crashing Xbox specifically? Entire raids not working because of, you know, certain spaghetti code things. Like you had Vault of Glass. As soon as Edge of Fate came out, you were not able to launch Vault of Glass because if you did, it would crash your PC. Got another really weird one, which I bet you don't know about because this is more of a sort of low man circle thing. But, you know, if you have imps in the Wyvern encounter in the Desert Perpetual, if you have too many imps active, your combination blow will just not work. The Hunter combination blow just won't work for some reason. Like it just, it's so strange. What I'm trying to say is, as a passionate piece of feedback, I would really like it if the game just broke less. There are so many things that are just not working improperly or just completely broken. Like, how is a sword hilt doing absolutely thousands of damage without any ammo? Like, I don't understand. And you know, things with Sturm, I mean, surely we would have tested the fact that it was just not buffing the bullets of Sturm only, but everything else when you held the gun out. Did we do like 5 minutes of testing there? Anyway, like I said, I'm not here really to dog on Bungie at all. It's more just like a passionate piece of feedback. I would just love it if you guys tested things a little bit more and made it so the game was less broken. And we're just going to be jumping between topics here. I have a whole list of things on my screen here. So moving on, I also want to go and talk about Sandbox Freshness. Now, what do I mean by Sandbox Freshness? And that is that every sort of major update, I suppose, every 3 months, if it's possible, I think it would be really nice to have things that mix up the sandbox or even add new things to it. And the perfect example of this is Episode Heresy, because in Episode Heresy, we got 3 new aspects for the light classes. We got the Titan Storm's Keep, which, as you know, is one of the most iconic aspects ever since it was released, especially with the addition of Bolt Charge. Not only did we get the 3 aspects, we got a brand new verb for the arc classes in the form of Bolt Charge, which was utterly fantastic. We also got On the Prowl, which admittedly isn't, you know, anything fantastic, but it is something new to mess around with. And then we also got Ionic Sentry, which in just a few weeks is getting a buff later on in Ash 9, where it's going to count as a grenade, which is really nice, which it should have originally, to be honest. But the thing is with this is that it adds so much variety to the sandbox, and it enables so many more cool builds that were never possible before. And if you guys remember, Arc Warlock was so much fun in Episode Heresy, and it still is very good, even with the buffs to Geomag stabilizers. So many classes which we never played before, as a result of these changes, bring so much more life to the sandbox. And I think that Bungie should really be focusing on this rather than other things. And the main point I bring up here is Renegades. Renegades looks really good. One of the things they showed off were these Renegade abilities, these sort of things that you can call in. A lot of people were making comparisons to Helldivers 2, and rightfully so. It kind of looked like these, you know, stratagems you call in. There was like a funny animation you did with your fingers, and it like sent in a little coin that entered like a couple drop pod or something of the like a missile strike, for example. But the thing is with that is only restricted to Renegades, seemingly. It's kind of like Matter Spark and Matter Morph. They're only restricted to the Edge of Fate. So rather than spending resources on that, I mean, yes, they are cool, but obviously they are self-contained. If you spent that time instead on something like new Darkness supers or a new subclass entirely. You know, that lasts for a lot longer than these renegade abilities do because they are just contained to the DLC that they came with. And honestly, from a more personal note, every time that I watch a reveal stream for a new piece of Destiny content, be it a season, a major expansion, I'm always hoping in the back of my mind, like, please, can we please get a new subclass, new aspects, new something to do with our powers? It just hasn't happened yet for quite a while since Heresy. And Heresy was a shock, you know, I wasn't really expecting that, and it did turn out quite nice. In my opinion, the biggest things right now that would really breathe some life into a major update, for example, would be new darkness supers or filling out the remaining light aspects that are missing. Because if you didn't know, every single light subclass except Solar Hunter, Solar Titan, and I believe Void Warlock have 4 aspects. Those 3 only have 3. There is serious need for some variety with the darkness subclasses as well, especially with Stasis. It's kind of falling behind, and you know, having a one-off super for Stasis Warlock, for example, would be absolutely excellent. And even just for Titan as well, for Strand Titan, having a one-off for that, it would really transform these classes and make them way more endgame viable. Because even just in the case of Stasis Warlock, the neutral game on Stasis Warlock is really good. You've got Stasis turrets, you've got Frost Pulse, you've got continuous Frost armor that you can also give to your teammates. It's very support oriented with regards to the Stasis kit. However, the super is just absolutely terrible for damage in like raids and so on and so on. So having a one-off for that, like a giant icicle you could summon above your head and then just chuck that down, that would be awesome in my opinion. That should be something they focus on. New subclasses, Bungie are really good at making them. With the exception of Prismatic, which was the most recent one, Strand, in my opinion, is the best subclass they've ever made. It is so much fun. It revolutionized movement, damage, of course, because it added grapple. You've got grapple melees. It looks really cool as well. It's very visually appealing to stare at. You know, they've done a very good job with Strand. You know, I didn't really consider Prismatic a new subclass because they didn't really make too many new powers for that. I mean, yes, they did. They had Helion, Unbreakable, and Ascension. Obviously very iconic, but you know, not as part of a whole new subclass. You know, give us the red subclass, Bungie. Give us the Siva subclass. But yeah, that's what I really mean about Sandbox Freshness. I would prefer that over self-contained powers like the, you know, renegade abilities we've been shown. And I hope the bloody lightsaber is not a renegade destination ability. I hope that is a weapon, please, for the love of God. Just for the last point for this section, even just the recent changes to Empowering Rift and Weaver's Call and the buffs to Weave Walk really mix things up. You know, you've seen people running around on Strand Warlock more than they have ever before because it's actually a really solid class now. So just more of this, please, because it brings so much variety and so much life to the game that can last for months. The next point I have written down is for better communication and player insight. And what I mean by that is really just giving us more context about why certain decisions are made. Because recently, with all the disaster twabs that happened, you know, you've got all of these buffs and nerfs and really weird decisions from Bungie, which thankfully they have reverted most of now. They never really gave explanations as to why that was, and some of them were just so weird. Like, why are we nerfing Queenbreaker now after particle reconstruction is gone, after nobody's using it anymore because it doesn't have enough total damage compared to other options? Why are we nerfing it when there are so many better options in the game for the current meta, the current endgame, such as the Desert Perpetual? You don't see anybody running Queenbreaker in Desert Perpetual because it has way less total damage compared to all the other options like Finality's Augur or Parasite or Thunderlord even. Same reason why are we nerfing Lord of Wolves? Lord of Wolves was a powerhouse back in episode Heresy, but we're past that time again, so why are we even bothering now? And some other things like with Chromatic Fire, and you know, I could go down that whole route of like, why are they even tweaking these things? But the main idea is, you know, we could be doing with some better communication on those things. Explanations for why things are buffed and nerfed have been kind of falling off recently. It'd just be nice to have something better for that. And it would just be nice to have more things like live streams, blog articles, or even podcasts where devs come on and explain certain decisions. It really humanizes them. And speaking of humanizing devs, I would love to hear more from the actual game director, Tyson Green. I know a lot of creators who were invited to Bungie to play The Edge of Fate early got to interview him and speak to him about his philosophies and how he sees his vision for the game and Edge of Fate going forward. But if you compare him to somebody like Joe Blackburn, who was basically always active on Twitter, answering people's questions, being a very public-facing game director, we don't even have that from Tyson Green. In fact, I don't even know if he has a Twitter account. I don't know if that's just by design, if it's because of like harassment and certain things like that. You know, that's totally valid. But it would be nice just to have him write something like a state of the game, which is something that Joe Blackburn wrote multiple of in his time at Bungie, explaining where their rationale is, where they want to take the game. Something like that would be really nice to have, in my opinion. And also, just to conclude this part, another continuous issue is missing patch notes, because there were so many that came with the Edge of Fate that we just didn't know about, like Speaker's Sight having its duration reduced from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. We were never told that in the patch notes. I can't think of any other examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure you guys can leave them in the comments or something. Lots of things just weren't written about in the patch notes, which shouldn't be happening, though I don't know if that's to do with like a small number of people left on the QA team. It's hard to know at this point, but you know, we can always try and advocate for Bungie to do better, which is why I'm saying this in the first place. Okay, so now I want to talk about the portal, and I am a believer in the portal, but I still think it needs some improvements. I think the portal can be the best thing that has happened to Destiny ever. That is my opinion. I think if you give it time, if you give it like a year, I know people say give it time. That's one of the things that people keep saying about Destiny, I will admit, but I do think it's great. I think the portal is a really good way of getting people, especially new players, into older content or just recycling older content that deserves to be in the limelight, like dungeons and raids. But you know, obviously we have a long way to go to get there, and it seems like the resources to be able to put these activities into the portal is fairly high, because we did get the dungeon layers recently, and those are, you know, one encounter / one space part of the dungeon, and we only got 3 of them, and there's, I don't know, 9-10 dungeons in this game with more encounters. And further to that, the ones that were added, the dungeon layers, they didn't reprise the weapons from those dungeons to the new tier system, which again tells me that it seems like it's a lot of work to do that. However, if they can, I think Bungie need to find a way to expedite the process of getting those activities into the portal as quickly as possible. And just with regards to the portal in general, it still needs to be the fact that longer activities need to drop more loot and make it worth doing them. The coil now drops 5 drops at the end, which is pretty nice. However, it still takes 40 minutes to do, and within those 40 minutes, you're only getting the mid-activity drops that you get. They're not powerful. So you're basically just waiting 40 minutes to get 5 drops, which is 1 drop every 8 minutes, kind of, which isn't very efficient compared to other things like Heffend, which if you did Heffend now, which drops 2 drops by the way, which is quite good, you can do Heffend in 2 minutes if you do the DSM tech, and you get 2 drops. So it's 1 drop a minute. So why would I ever want to do the coil if I can do Heffend in 2 minutes, which is way more efficient? However, this is being changed in the future, where Bungie did state in the most recent TWID that bonus engrams are being made powerful in the future, which is what they should have been originally, but this change is massive. I don't know if you guys really grasp how massive it is going to be for bonus engrams to drop power, because you're probably just playing 1 or 2 activities in the portal right now. And then if you look at all the other activities you have, they all have like 3 bonus engrams on them. So right now, there is no reason to do them because those bonus engrams aren't powerful. But in the future, when they are, it's going to incentivize so much variety of hopping between activities, just clearing all of the ones which have 3 drops. And if you just pick and choose the ones which are, you know, somewhat efficient for your time. So if you take like a Fallen Saber, for example, that's like an average clear time of 10 minutes. So if you have 3 drops on that, that's 1 drop every 3 minutes. Again, not as efficient as Heffend, but I feel like they're going to patch the DSM anyway. Still very efficient, very respectful of your time. When that change goes in, that's going to be massive, and I hope it is before Renegades, but at least we can expect it to be in Renegades at the very least. I've also got some other points written down here, like saving portal modifier presets, like a loadout for the portal, for example, things that you like to put on every time. It does do this already if you're farming the same activity over and over, but you know, as soon as you click another activity, it just resets them and you have to choose them again, and you know, reducing the number of clicks to get the modifiers that you want. And you know, there's a whole other conversation there about modifiers being annoying and time consuming to put on activities. And there was a piece of feedback I saw Scarrow give near the beginning of Ash and Iron, and that was the fact that he just wanted to jump straight in and try the new activities, you know, without having to worry about portal modifiers or anything, and just get some loot out of them. And it just, the fact that you have to just pause and take a look at your modifiers, especially if you're higher power, and be like, okay, I need to put on Touche, and then I need to put on Pressure Cooker, and then, oh, that's not enough to get me A tier, so then I need to put on a Bane as well, and then, oh, a -10, and that only just gets you over to the A threshold, and oh wait, one of my teammates doesn't have a new gear piece on, so I have to tell them, like, please dude, can you please put on your Synancia instead of your Falling Guillotine? And then it just gets very awkward, and you know, you're wasting all this time while you just want to go in and play the activity. And I don't know what they can do about that, but they definitely need to think of some solution to that whole just annoying time sink barrier to entry with choosing modifiers. Have a preset bunch of modifiers, for example, that maybe isn't on a delta, so that the activity isn't impossible. But again, that's just something that we'll see in time. Just voicing my concerns about that. I'd rather just be able to jump in straight away with a new activity. So lots to be done with the portal, but I do believe it is one of the best things that has happened to this game if realized properly. Then we are moving on to some feedback I have for acquisition of loot, currency, and just the power grind, again with some more extra notes. And the first point I want to make is that armor acquisition should be better, because right now, if you're wanting to farm a perfect tier 5 piece of gear, which has, let's just say it has a specific set bonus as well. So if it's not Kepler gear and you just want to get like a tier 5 piece of smoke jumper armor that is a gunner with a tertiary in super and a tuning slot in either weapons or super, the chances of you getting that are astronomically low. In fact, it's 1 in 144 if you don't factor in your ghost mod. If you factor in your ghost mod, I believe it kind of slashes that down a little bit, maybe to less than 100, maybe 1 in 80 sort of thing. But 1 in 80 isn't fantastic for like the perfect piece that you want, and we need that improved. I've seen a few ideas floated around. The attunement on your ghost should be guaranteed. So if I put a gunner on my ghost, every piece of armor I get should be gunner. I think that's good. I think because if you have that, the RNG is only for the tertiary and the tuning slot, and the RNG for that is 1 in 4 over 1 in 6, which is 1 in 24. I still think there needs to be a certain element of grind when it comes to armor, but me personally, I'm okay farming for a 1 in 24. That's, you know, okay in an MMO game, kind of like Destiny. That's okay with me. I'm happy farming a 1 in 24. However, there'll be some people saying that no, that's still too extreme. So you could add some sort of focusing for your tertiary stat, which would reduce things even further, because obviously currently the chances to get the tertiary stat that you want are 1 in 4. What if it was 1 in 2 instead? So if it was 1 in 2, then it would only be a 1 in 12 to get your perfect armor piece if you had the guaranteed archetype focus. Now, I don't know if Bungie will ever budge on that, if it's something that they want to keep as RNG as it is now to inflate player time, whatever it might be. I hate saying that Bungie keep things as they are in an effort to inflate player time. Might be true sometimes, I don't know, but the point is, I think armor needs some work with regards to farming perfect pieces. Not everybody is bothered about going for perfect pieces, but I feel like that's the whole allure of tier 5s, is that you want to be going for the best possible, and just the fact that it's currently a 1 in 144, if you don't factor in any focusing, it's not good enough in my opinion. Who knows if they'll patch the Kepler loot cave, so you know, use that while you can. There's also the fact that exotics being tier 2 is a thing, which is just so backwards. I don't know why they decided to do that. And the funny thing is, in the reveal stream for Edge of Fate, there was somebody who was wearing, I believe it was a Eunoia, that was tier 5. It had 100 total stats. It had, you know, like the perfect distribution. It had a tuning slot as well. They clearly have the technology to do it, but they just haven't implemented it into the game. And I don't think we're seeing it until summer 2026. So please, if we can make it faster, if we can make that come out in Renegades, I would really like exotics to be above tier 2, because it just makes your stats look ugly and it's just annoying for optimization purposes. That is what it is. Some other things, like I would like to see more uses for strange coins, because currently, if you're somebody who has the majority of the exotic class item combos that you want for your classes, there's no real need to spend strange coins on anything except maybe masterwork cores that Zer brings around. Just something you can spend them on, like increasing your chances at guaranteeing like a tier 5 or something like that. Just something else to spend your strange coins on would be nice. And then having some more unique loot, like in original Destiny 1 and D2 Year 1 strike exclusive gear. That has been removed forever, and it would just be nice to have something like that brought back. I doubt it is, but you know, I want to voice my feedback anyway. And then I would like to have more ways of focusing certain guns. Bungie were getting really good at focusing systems. In fact, I think the best focusing system they've done is the Tome of Want from Episode Heresy. You literally just clicked a few buttons and then you were able to focus the armor piece, the gun, or a resource that you wanted for like however many completions of a certain activity you got. You were guaranteed a piece of what you focused, or it was a really good chance anyway. Obviously, they've done away with that. There's no focusing system in Ash and Iron or with the Edge of Fate, with the exception of the Kepler attunement, so it is still a thing in the game, but they've just taken to not implementing it elsewhere. You know, I'd really like a vendor or a menu in the portal where I can click new additions, such as the new smoke jumper armor, if I wanted to focus that, and it would just have an increased chance of dropping from every portal activity I completed. They are kind of doing that with the bonus focus, which it is literally in the game. It is a bonus focus, but again, that's just a chance of dropping. And I feel like they should make that a 100% chance on the day, just so every run you got that bonus. But I would just like to see that expanded. Give the vendors a use, make it Zavala again, make him be the focusing guy, because I could go on about how they've completely massacred the vendors in this game, removing the tracks and so on, which I think was a terrible decision. But yes, it would be nice to have attunement, because we've seen it since the dawn of time. If people know that they will get a drop from doing an activity over and over, and they will get it every time, they will happily sit there and farm it for hours, self included. So for my last few points, I want to start with gilding and endgame cosmetics. And I'm just going to quickly go through these, just to, I think the video is probably a little bit long already, so let's just kind of go through these. So with title gilding, I think title gilding or completion of a title should mean more, especially in the context of raids and dungeons. Now, I think that if you gild, or if you complete a raid or dungeon seal, you should be able to launch any checkpoint that you want from that activity. It should earn you the right to be able to do that. For the longest time, when farming raids and dungeons, we we've always just done the awkward character swap, get the checkpoint on one character, swap when you like load your teammates in onto a different one, so you keep it on the other, and you just do that over and over and over. Bungie know that we do this, they promote it in fact, but they still don't give us a way to do it in game that doesn't involve this awkward workaround. So I think maybe if they wanted to attach it to some sort of grind, doing it via the completion of a title of that rad content should be the good way of going about it. And then it's just also ties back into the conversation about meaningful cosmetics for these things. You know, as of late, the Eververse has been pretty egregious with the amount of armor sets that have been put in it. However, we did see a resolution to that with a set of armor taken from Eververse and put into Iron Banner amid the controversy of the original Gladius set being intended for Iron Banner, which I think was a good move from Bungie. So we, you know, props to them for doing that, even though it should never have happened in the first place. But you've got other things like the Vex ornament set or the Taken ornament set, which could have been earned from in-game places. Like imagine if you completed the Heresy title, for example. Heresy was basically an epilogue to the Taken King expansion. You had Oryx, Savathun, you had Zivarath, all involved. The story was pretty solid. It was set on the Dreadnought. The stage was set for a really good cosmetic offering, and they could have given it to you. If you finished the Heresy title, you should have been able to get the Taken armor instead of it being in Eververse now in Ash and Iron, which is completely unrelated. Same thing goes for the VexNet armor set, which was released at the beginning of Edge of Fate. That should have been something that you could earn from the Desert Perpetual raid, which I'm sure would have made people play a lot more of the raid than they are currently, you know, minus all the loot problems that that raid has, which is being fixed on Tuesday. Current armor set for the Desert Perpetual does look pretty nice, but having just an extra layer of cosmetics like the Vex armor set from Eververse added to the title completion would have been nice. And then there's some other things like Guardians who have achieved great feats / masteries like flawless raids or whatever should have a special cosmetic and or glow, especially in the tower, but I think that's a ways off. But you know, it has happened in the past. If you completed the Nightfall before, you had the glow around your head in both Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. So why can't we do the same for like a flawless raid, give it some sort of special flair, maybe attach it to the title again, things like that. And then we move on to the new player experience and legacy / DCB content. And we do need to talk about that a little bit, because even now in the Edge of Fate with this kind of supposed revamp, the new player experience, from what I've heard, is still not fantastic. I know now that you can do certain things like skip the New Light campaign and just get straight into it, like getting the New Light kits. You don't have to do any of that. I believe if you just look at any new player video, I believe Sweatcicle does them quite a lot. You're just bombarded with quests and things that you have no idea what to do. There's no clear direction, at least before the content vaulting. You knew what to do. The Red War campaign was a great place to start. After that, you could do Curse of Osiris and Warmind if you wanted to, or you could just go straight into Forsaken. Just do things in chronological order because they were all available at the time. And because that isn't possible anymore, I think it just leads to new players being very confused. Though I have heard a rumor that Renegades is supposedly going to be improving the new player experience. Difficult to really know at this point. Maybe there's a new player experience overhaul. You know, they haven't told us everything about Renegades. In fact, we know barely anything other than, you know, the aesthetics in Star Wars and all that. Maybe this is something they're working on in Renegades. It would be nice, you know, leave your ideas in the comments below about what you think the new player experience should be. I also wanted to note another thing here, and that is about setting expectations for returning destinations. So the Dreadnought, I think, was handled really well. They didn't bring back the whole Dreadnought. In fact, the only patrol zones that were missing were inside the Cabal ship, but everything else was there, and it was handled really good. It looked fantastic, especially with the Hull Breach area with a giant sword. That was really good. The Plague Lands, though, I don't know about the Plague Lands because they just kind of look all devoid of life. If you guys have seen any comparison videos of the Destiny 1 Plague Lands to the Destiny 2 Plague Lands, it's just kind of depressing, man. It's nice to have them back, but they are just lifeless, soulless. And there are dead splices everywhere as well. You know, it's all just a bit sad. You know, with Ash and Iron, it was a lot to expect them to bring back something like Wrath of the Machine, for example. Just a bit sad to see the Plague Lands come back. I think they could do a better job if they ever bring back legacy destinations like that. There's also the fact that the separation between the portal and the director, in my opinion, is just far too harsh. It's like they're two separate games. Having the portal be the center for everything in the current game is nice, but then where's everything else? You know, you can tie this back into the discussion we had previously about raids and everything. It's just something needs to be done about that. Integrate them into the same screen or something. Have the director as the default screen, but then have like a button for the portal within the director. So it always starts you on the director, but then you can access the portal, you know, from within it, which I think would probably be nicer? Let me know if you like that idea in the comments. And then the last thing, which is totally random, they need to bring back Wrath of the Machine, man. It's such a W that's just waiting to happen. They've teased this for years with so many Siva ornaments for guns and armor alike, and they just haven't brought it back. And then now that we have the Plague Lands back, it's, you know, it's just not there. Like I said, it was really, to expect Wrath to come back at the same time as the Plague Lands was foolish, especially for a major update. It's a whole raid in like a supposed season sort of thing. You know, you were silly to assume that, or just huffing on the greatest strain of copium, but they just have to bring it back. They have to figure out some way. They're investing a lot of resources into rad content because we have the Epic Raid coming out later this week. And then we also have a supposed Pantheon experience, which is coming out in the Shadow and Order major update, or, you know, around that time. So they are putting a lot of development resources into these activities. If there was a raid coming out in Shattered Cycle, which is the expansion in 2026, let's just can the Epic Raid for that and focus those resources instead on bringing Wrath back, because people love that raid. Honestly, would be such a good time to have that back with the tier system now, especially with it being remastered with better mechanics into Destiny 2. It would just be great. Finishing up with some miscellaneous things, I would like more substantial story for major updates similar to old seasons/episodes, or maybe just like a miniature campaign that's not just one mission that takes you to the tower in first person where the Vex are attacking at night and there's nobody there. Like, what even was that mission at the start of Ashen Iron? Just some better story and more of it for these major updates, because remember, Bungie compared these major updates to Into the Light. You should expect an Into the Light style update 3 months after a major expansion. Does Ashen Iron feel like Into the Light? Hell no. It's like half or even a quarter of what Into the Light was. Then I have renewed PvP focus. I'm a PvE creator, so I can't really comment on PvP much, but I'm sure anyone who plays PvP who is watching this video can agree with me that, you know, PvP has taken a back seat over the years, or it seems like it has a perpetual backseat. I want to enjoy PvP because I like playing PvP. It's just that there's problems with cheaters and just low populations in all of the modes, bad decisions in the modes. They're not all, you know, as good as they could be anymore. Like, making Iron Banner good again would be so nice to honor its Destiny 1 legacy, just making Trials fantastic again to honor its past. Just so many things that would be nice to have in PvP, but, you know, I don't play it enough to comment. And then it's just bringing the social aspect back to Destiny. Is the fact that I made a tweet about this, you know, a few weeks back. The two most recent destinations that they have made, which are the Pale Heart and Kepler, well, they're solo destinations. You can't find players in the wild in those destinations, which is just really strange to me. The Pale Heart, I kind of understand, because it's supposed to be your personal journey to the end of the world, and you're saving the world by yourself, and you're there with the Vanguard and everything. You're the Guardian. But Kepler is supposed to be this exploratory outing where there's this distress signal, this mysterious problem. You know, you should be able to meet other Guardians out there who are in lore experimenting or sort of investigating this problem. So why can't I find other players in Kepler? I don't know. Is it a like server issue? Is it a bandwidth thing? I hope that in Renegades, at least the Cantina destination, like, has other players in it. I don't want to be solo launching into that, which would be nice. But then I think the other destinations in Renegades, which are like Venus, Europa, and Mars, I think they're all going to be match-made activities. So, you know, those will be social. But, you know, why is Kepler solo? Like, why can't I just find players on Kepler? And then Fireteam Finder. Why is Fireteam Finder completely hidden in like your roster menu? I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who doesn't like that. I feel like Fireteam Finder should be somewhere on the director or on the portal if they really wanted the portal to be the main place for people to, you know, play the game and find friends with. Why isn't there a button for Fireteam Finder in the portal? Or maybe there is. Maybe I just haven't seen it. That is basically everything that I wanted to talk about today, guys. If you agree with anything that I said, or, you know, would like to provide your own feedback, then please do leave it in the comments on the off chance that this video ends up finding its way to somebody at Bungie for them to listen to our feedback. And, you know, I don't really do these videos terribly often, and I didn't want it to be a doom and gloom video like I've seen so many other people posting. I wanted to, you know, make it a passionate piece of feedback of what I think needs improving in the game, and just kind of relaying things from what people have said in my community to what I personally believe in as well, to make this game better. Because people always come into my comments, or I get asked by people like, you know, why are you still playing this game? It's just like so dead or whatever. And the thing is, like, there is nothing like Destiny. I want this game to succeed, and I think it can in the long run, and there is just nothing like it, and that's why it can be so successful. There is no competitor, there is no like other game that compares to Destiny, there is no Destiny killer. The only Destiny killer is Destiny itself. There's nothing like it, and I really want to see it flourish. This game has limitless potential, and if in the right hands, you know, maybe with the recent Sony takeover and the leadership switch up, it could lead to some, you know, seriously good things. So I'm hoping that Renegades is good. Time between now and then is going to be quite painful, but I've been saying this to my friends. As soon as October rolls around, things are going to start to get better. Because September, there's nothing happening except the epic raid. But we're almost finished with September anyway. And when October comes out, we're going to have the exotic mission. We're going to have all of the Warlock changes. And then as we get closer to Renegades, we're going to have the Titan and Warlock Sandbox changes as well. Some more, you know, additions to the portal, changes to class identity and so on. So things are looking up. You know, we've been here before. Destiny is very much a we're so back, it's so over type of game. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video and resonated with my feedback. Again, leave yours in the comments below. Have a good day, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye for now, dear viewer.